When you drive home from work or school, what kind of things go through your mind? Maybe you think about your family, maybe the food you will eat, maybe how you've needed to go to the gym, or perhaps that good nap you deserve. But whatever it is, you're not thinking about what turn you will make next, or what lane you need to be in. Why? Because you already know. This is a trip that you have made many times before, therefore you know what to expect. The first time you made this trip, you likely paid close attention to the route, but after that, it was all about thinking about food and naps. After the first time, there is no sense in stressing over the trip and thinking about each turn because this mental occupation would be redundant. Here, the act and behavior of driving is a necessary redundancy, where the devotion of constant conscious thought would be an unnecessary redundancy. In this situation, the conscious mind hands off the redundant affairs of driving to the more tolerant subconscious mind in order for the conscious mind to focus on creative matters. The redundancy of driving is thus eliminated from the conscious thought and redirected into subconscious thought. This is the nature of mental sublimination. Sublimination is an extremely common mechanism that we use as a tool to limit the mind's occupation with necessary redundancy. Even besides driving, there are many other examples that we can use and think about in terms of mental sublimination. When you breathe, when you're breathing right now, are you doing it consciously? You might just because I brought it up to you, but do you normally breathe consciously? Do you normally think about each breath you take? No, you don't think about each breath you take because if you thought constantly about each breath you would take, you wouldn't have time to think about anything else because you constantly need to breathe. That's where mental sublimination comes in. Mental sublimination takes that action, takes that behavior of breathing and makes that subconscious, so that's something your body subconsciously does. Let's take another example. Typing. When you first learned how to type, what did you do? You looked at the keys and you went one by one, right? As time goes on though, and as you kept typing and you kept working at it, it became a redundancy. After you've done it so many times, certain letters became a redundancy. Oh, I know where F is. Oh, I know where J is. All these different things become second nature. And that's really what sublimination is about, is when everything becomes second nature to the point where you don't have to think about it consciously. So what exactly is sublimination? Sublimination is making something subliminal. Sublimination is the elimination of something from the conscious mind. You see, we have three levels of consciousness. We have the conscious mind, we have the preconscious mind, and we have the unconscious mind. Both the preconscious and the unconscious mind fall into the category of subconscious, anything below conscious level. Now, what are these levels of consciousness? How may we define them? The way I define these levels of consciousness is this. Conscious thought are those thoughts that we think about thinking. Those thoughts that we think about thinking are conscious thoughts. Those are the thoughts that we are aware of, okay? That we are conscious of, conscious thoughts. Preconscious thoughts are those thoughts that we consider thinking about. Now that might sound really funny, but just bear with me. Now the unconscious thoughts are the thoughts that we don't think about. Those are all the thoughts that go on in our mind, in the back of our mind, that we're not aware of, that we don't think about thinking about, you see. And if you think about it, and forgive me, I'm not trying to sound too redundant with all these thinking. If you think about it, I believe you'll agree with that concept. Because there are thoughts, there are always constantly a sea and a river of thoughts that are going through our mind that we're not even consciously aware of. But we know about them because they come into existence or they come into our awareness at certain times, at one moment or another. And often you will realize and you'll be aware that you're thinking about multiple things at one single time. Well, that's where the different levels of consciousness come in. Now, what are the purposes, what are the human purposes of the different levels of consciousness? Well, on the top level, on the level of conscious thought, what happens is those are the thoughts that we designate to focus the most logic and the most manipulation to. Conscious thoughts are the thoughts that we spend the most time attributing and relating and contrasting and comparing to other thoughts. Those are the thoughts that are under the microscope per se, okay? These are the thoughts that we analyze and consider with other thoughts. Now, the way I kind of imagine the unconscious mind is just a sea of relatively disconnected thought and disconnected concepts, okay? The conscious mind is the realm where connections are created. The conscious mind is the realm where connections are made, where memories are created, where ideas are retained within the mind. Now, in this context, we may see that the process of sublimination is a wonderful tool of the human mind. You see, it allows us to accomplish something, accomplish a necessary redundancy in our lives, while being able to focus our conscious thought on creative matters, on creative affairs, things that are interesting to us. The whole reason I wanted to bring up sublimination and define sublimination for you today is that sublimination has a very significant role in our schools today, and not necessarily a benevolent one. Now, sublimination is probably one of the biggest themes of my book, because as you will see in some of my other videos, scholastic sublimination is procured by educational productionism.